I began to have a headache and feel a little bit weak, and Stephanie later that evening began to feel poorly as well.
We were praying we had a cold, and within 3 or 4 days, we realized that we were not only sick, but we were very sick.
The World Health Organization today declared the coronavirus a global pandemic, citing the alarming levels of spread, but also the alarming levels of inaction.
Coronavirus a global pandemic.
The death toll rising here in the U.S. to at least
118,000.
The pain in my chest and the body aches were kind of out of this world for me. And I was very concerned with Dan because he has chronic asthma.
My lungs were already in bad shape, and I thought I was just having asthma issues or something. But it turned out to be with the headache, which then turned into fever. We began to get a little nervous about what was going on. I began to use more and more of the emergency medication and treatment to the point where I was using maximum dose every 4 hours, more than I would normally get even in an ER, and my ability to breathe was declining.
This is where things became a battle, because we knew if we went to the hospital, Dan and I would be separated. And we also knew that because of his severe conditions, that there was a very real possibility that he wouldn't make it.
I wrote out my will in the car because I had no rational expectation of survival.
We were praying in the car on the way to the hospital, and I remember turning to Dan in my sorrow and saying, I need you to know before we get there and we're separated, that you are the love of my life. And I love everything about our life together. And I just need you to know that. And we both cried. I just started to drive home. Loneliness and darkness came over me. And I was sleeping about 16 hours a day because I was so sick. I had to self-isolate, self-quarantine, and we live alone, so there was nobody at the house. I heard within me 3 days, 3 days. We were in the middle of Lent, and somehow there was a consolation with it, a sense that I had to wait 3 days. When I received that news, I have to tell you that I was crushed. I was shaken to my core.
What I entered into was a blackness that I'd never experienced before. You're alone, feeling completely alone, because when you enter into ICU with COVID-19, you don't see anybody's faces.
I had great fear, but I never lost faith, and I fought that fear. And I stayed in prayer, and I didn't let it overtake me.
I wouldn't say I had a lack of peace, but I was in quite significant distress. I was ready to die.
I poured my heart out in a post, in a letter. I sent it out far and wide, and I said, please pray for my husband. He's been put on a ventilator. We need to send those prayers to heaven and pray specifically that his lungs would heal, that he would start to breathe on his own by the power of the Holy Spirit. I received a call from the nurse, and she said, Mrs. Burke, I need to let you know that your husband twisted through his restraints and he's pulled the ventilator out. He pulled the tube out. And I said, is he okay? And she said, yes, not only is he okay, but he's breathing on his own. And that was the 3rd day.
And that was a turning point.
When I picked him up, he was so weak, he was using a walker. I was shocked at the impact that it had on his body.
Probably a week after being at home, before the darkness really completely lifted and I could smile again. The battle was so overwhelming, like a little kid with a tiny sword coming up against the Prince of Darkness.
It's brought an urgency, not a moment of our life, of our breath, of our energy, of our resources could be taken for granted or wasted. The time is now. This battle is very deep and it's very dark and it's all over the world. And the Lord is calling us back to himself.